You spoke today about your concept of the Homo evolutus. Can you just share with our readers what is meant by that?
So far we've been 25 different species of human beings, 25 different species of hominids, sometimes called Neanderthal, sometimes called Cro-Magnon, sometimes called Heidelbergensis, sometimes called Floriensis. There have been various versions, just like there have been various versions of automobiles, or just like there are various versions of birds. And right now there's only a single human being left on the planet, when what is normal is for several human beings to coexist on the planet. The argument that Steve Gullins, my co-author, and I are making is that we are now entering a period where not only are we aware of our environment, we're beginning to directly and deliberately alter the evolution of our own and of other species. And in the measure we do that, it's not just our environment that shapes us, it's all of us shaping the environment and shaping our own genes and the genes of other species, and that makes us a Homo evolutus. It's the first specimen that's ever been able to shape evolution as well as work with evolution.
But how do we do that? I mean, there's a lot of debate going on in this country about what genes can and cannot.
Well, genes are a shorthand. So what we're beginning to learn is the genome, which is our gene code, matters. The proteome, which is how the proteins interact in our bodies, matter. The metabolome, which is the whole of how we metabolize things, matters. The stuff that's floating inside our cells matters. And even more than that, the environment around us. We have 100 times more microbial cells in our bodies than we have human cells. And in the measure that we have that, they allow us to digest, they allow us to close wounds, they allow us to live in a symbiosis, which we only realize we have when one of those bugs turns really bad, when it hurts our stomach, when it provides an infection. But most of the time, bugs are incredibly beneficial.
But that is what we share with other species on this planet, right? This is also something that is specific human, right?
Well, no animal other than humans understands microbes. And no animal on this planet has come around and thought about microbes in terms of engineering a microbial environment, which is what we do when we eat yogurt, which is what we do when we use antibacterial soaps, which is what we do when we use penicillin. No other species has ever thought about altering or changing a microbial environment or even understanding a microbial environment.
Did you say, or you emphasized that there were times when there were several species of man on the planet at the same time? Why did the others go extinct in the first place?
Well, actually, we came really close to extinction. We came within about 2,000 human specimens of there being none of us on the planet. And, it is usual for animals to go extinct. It is usual for them not to find enough food. It's usual for them not to be able to reproduce. It's usual for them to be eaten. It's usual for them to come down with diseases. It's pretty extraordinary what we've done, and we've survived not by being the largest or the strongest or the nastiest, maybe the nastiest, but we've actually survived by very carefully engineering where we live, how we're protected, how much calories we store, how we combat disease, how we're able to reproduce, how we create moral codes. That's been the secret to our success, and probably other hominids, even though they had pieces of that, they couldn't put together the whole puzzle.
And is it now, in the process, you talk about just getting faster? So, every generation handed over other kind of knowledge, and in our times, it's because we are connected and all that, it's just progress is quicker? Yes,
we're about to enter a period where we're going to double the amount of data generated by the human species in all of its history in the next 5 years. And what that's doing is it's creating these immense databases that allow very young kids to create very large companies in a very short period of time, and very different environments in a short period of time. So when you look at the range of where we're living and the comfort of where we're living, and the variety of materials we have, and the different ways we have of living, and the excess of calories we generate, and the ability to take a third of humanity out of poverty in the last 30 years. These are very, very large-scale changes, and they're taking place at an accelerating pace.
in the beginning of your statement, you said something about it's good for kids, so kids really go faster in founding companies and stuff, which help in the end improving our environment. But coming to moral standards, it doesn't seem to me that you can inherit them. So it seems to me that our strive for freedom, we have to relearn, or democracy, not hurting other people. It's just something that is to be learned by each generation, like as the other generation before would not have existed in a way.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, I'll give you one very simple example. For our grandparents, there was exactly one way of getting pregnant. For our kids, at least 17 choices today, at the very least. And you can freeze an egg, you can freeze sperm, you can freeze a fertilized egg, you can have a surrogate mother, you can do gene therapy on those eggs, you can do selection on those eggs. There are just an enormous amount of technologies that one of the impacts of it is, there was one way of having a baby, and 10 months later, there it was. Today, in these multiple ways of having baby, you can have a baby if you choose in 5 years, or in 10 years, or in 50 years, or maybe a copy of yourself in 1,000 years. And we need different moral, ethical backbones to answer some of the questions that are being raised, because these are very large technology shifts.
Yeah, and how do we... I completely agree. We have this with the diagnostic. I don't know the English term exactly, but diagnostics before you get pregnant, and in vitro, and I mean, these are new technical possibilities. And how do we adjust or develop further our ethics?
Well, we haven't had to ask a lot of these questions. We've always selected or attempted to select the genes of our children by selecting a mate who is smarter, better looking, hopefully nicer than we are. So in a sense, when we're picking our spouse, we're trying to upgrade the next generation. And that's part of the reason why you have a spouse instead of just cloning yourself. What we're doing is we're now getting much more deliberate and specific about it. And we're understanding much more what a human growth hormone is and does. We're understanding exactly what mutation leads to green eyes. We're understanding exactly what mutation leads to the ability to win, or at least compete, in a power sport in the Olympics. And these maps are being made, and there will be some things that people will choose to do, just as they choose to do plastic surgery, that I think you and I will find hard to imagine.
And who would define then this new kind of ethics? Because in the past we had philosophy and religions who set up a Weltbild, which I think a word is that you also translated into English, or transferred into English. Who is, or is there not any kind of patterns or society binding ethics? Because I would say in the beginning it was also like evolutionary, a very advantage to have that standards.
So I think one of the things that is going to become more and more of a question, and is going to become more relevant, is this whole notion of resurrection. And there are some religious traditions that have that more at its core and some that don't. But in theory, we can take the skin cell of any animal and reproduce a copy of that animal. Now, you're not downloading the brain into that animal, but you're reproducing the body of that animal. And that leads to a whole series of interesting questions, and different parts of the world will come up with different answers as to just how far they want to go. But for those people who think, stop the bus, I want to get off, first, these are technologies that are so decentralized in so many different places, across so many different fields, that it's very hard to stop. And second, most religions that don't adapt and adopt, as Darwin argued, basically tend to disappear. In fact, just like 90% plus of the species have gone extinct, 90% plus of the religions have gone extinct, which is why we go to the archaeology museums to visit the gods of corn, the gods of water, the gods of the wind, Poseidon, Zeus, all of the folks we see in the Acropolis. They basically became irrelevant because technology exceeded their capacity to create a moral, ethical framework. And when religions get too conservative, when they get too fundamentalist, when they don't adapt and adopt, they tend to get left behind and disappear.